Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk to you about a show I loved as a teenager and I still love today as an adult. It is why I said I am a goosebumper for life, and that is R.L. Stein's Goosebumps, the TV series. It appeared back in '95 on Fox Kids, and it is an American-Canadian television show that was filmed in Canada. It's an anthology series. Now, Goosebumps used to be a series of books, and kind of still is, written by R.L. Stein. He said he got the inspiration to write these books when he was a kid, and he used to read the comic of Tales from the Crypt. And he said, like, even some of these stories are based kind of like off those, and some of the other stories are based off of like real life experiences, like the haunted mask. He said his son put it on and couldn't take it off. And as for Slappy the doll, he said that's based off of like Pinocchio. However, it seems more like it's based off of what's his name, Chucky the doll, but oh, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Now, a lot of the Goosebumps stories are very reminiscent of stuff you've seen before: werewolves, vampires, aliens, dolls coming to life, scarecrows coming to life. Pretty much anything you can think of, like horror movie wise, Goosebumps is like relevant based on that. But these are kid novels, and it's like they're spooky, they're creepy, but they're not too scary. And same with the show. Like you'll never see blood, guts, or bad language, nothing like that. Which I understand because it was a kid show. But it's like I wish they would make an adult version of it where it can be like really scary. And technically, Netflix is making an adult Goosebumps show. I don't know how adult it's going to be, but I'm hoping it will be actually scary. Because even though, like I said, I'm a Goosebumper for life, and I still watch the old episodes from the '90s. It is in the '90s, so it's a little cheesy. It's a little corny. It's not that scary. Basically, to get into like the mindset of like the episode, you have to think it's like real. If you think all this stuff is happening in real life to real little kids, then it's spooky, like creepy to you as an adult. Kids, however, will just like love this show because it's spooky and it's scary, but it's not like scary, you know? Now, Welcome to the Dead House was his first book he wrote, and it's a zombie novel. And ironically, it sold over 4 million copies nationwide. And he used to be the #1 bestseller in books until J.K. Rowling in the Harry Potter books beat him out. So now he's the second. Now his series of books came out in '92, but the show came out in '95, like I said. I remember when the books came out. I was in middle school. I think I might have been in the 7th or 8th grade. And I remember there was this one classmate I had from homeroom, and he got the entire class hooked on the Goosebump books to where everybody just started buying them. The ones I own, I believe, is Night of the Living Dummy 2 and Phantom of the Auditorium. And I remember just like, because I didn't like reading books back when I was younger. Like I hated it, but the Goosebump books were the only books I would ever read. And I remember like when I heard the TV show was getting made like 3 years later, oh man, I was ecstatic. I could not wait for it to show. And it did. And it was awesome as a kid growing up. It lasted for 4 seasons. The last season is not so good. There are a lot of good episodes, some not so much. Special effects are really bad because it's '90s. At some point they did get a little bit better. The costumes are fairly good looking and stuff. It's creepy '90s goodness, you know what I'm saying? Now after it was canceled at some point, Fox Kids went down under and Saban sold the rights, and then it went to Fox Box, and then it went away. But in 2001, R.L. Stein came back with The Nightmare Room, which that show only lasted 1 season. It had a lot of big name kid stars at that time. I personally don't like it. I like the last 3 episodes. That's all right. The Camp Nowhere, I believe it's called. Other than that, it's not a very good series, and I can see why it got canceled after just one season. Then in 2010, he came out with this one movie called like R.L. Stine, The Haunting Hour. Don't think about it. I personally don't like that movie, but it spun off into a TV series called The Haunting Hour, and I used to really enjoy that show. Like the first season, I actually thought was better than Goosebumps. Until halfway into the second season, it started to suck. And then from season 3 and 4, it was just garbage. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm still a Goosebumper for life. Now, Goosebumps has been made into a movie. It tried to make into a movie back in, I think, 92 with Tim Burton. But, as you can see, it didn't happen. But then in 2015, they came out with a movie. When I first heard about this, I'm thinking, cool, which, like, book are they going to base this off of? But then I'm like, oh, it's basically just Goosebumps meet Jumanji. I was, like, upset. Then I watched the movie. I'm like, oh, wow, it was actually a pretty good movie. Like, I actually enjoyed myself. They came out with a sequel movie. I haven't seen that one, but I heard it didn't do too well. Now, like I said before, Netflix is making a Goosebumps television series, but Netflix has also got the rights to R.L. Stine Fear Street, and it's a series of 3 movies. Other R.L. Stine properties have made it to the small screen, but didn't last that long. Eye Candy, I believe it was called. I believe it was like on MTV or something like that, or VH1. I tried to watch it. It had Victoria Justice in it, and I didn't like the first episode, and I stopped watching. And then next thing you know, the show got canceled. So go figure Newtons, you know what I'm saying? Now there have been tons of R.L. Stine books that have been brought to life in forms of movies, but they're not very good. Like Ghostly Mostly and some other ones that you can find on both Hulu and Netflix. They're just not scary whatsoever. They're more comedic. They're way more lighter in tone. The acting isn't all that great. And it's just like, I don't like them at all. Now, R.L. Stine has continued his series of Goosebump books. He keeps going back to the well, and he keeps reinventing them, changing the stories around, and rebooting the series over and over. Slappy, the doll, and the haunted mask are 2 of the ones that he constantly keeps going back and changing around. And he actually changed the haunted mask so much that the Carly Beth character is nothing like the original one. Now, around Halloween time, Cartoon Network used to air the Goosebump television series, and then they stopped. And I think the old television series might be on Netflix still to this day. I'm not sure. But I do know they're out on DVD. And every episode has been featured on the DVD, except for a few of them, like the Cuckoo Clock of Doom and also the Haunted Mask. The Haunted Mask is probably the most famous out of all the Goosebumps, like books and television series episodes. So I don't understand why that one's not on there. R.L. Stine loves horror. He loves scary stuff. He said he loves making little kids scared. And the reason why he loves making these books. Because, like with little kids like myself, when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies because I was just too scared. But then when I got into like a teenager, the first thing I watched was Scream. And that what got me into like more slasher movies and horror movies. So I understand why he wants to write for kids and kids only. One of the things that makes his books and shows so great are the twists. Like you'll go through an entire like your series or like an episode or book, and then it's like all of a sudden there's a huge twist at the end, and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe that's what's really going on. And it's just that a lot of his twists are just like insane. Now, some of them are just plain out lame and just weird, but it's like like I said before, you have to put yourself in that mindset of everything being real and then being told it's not, and then or something different, and it's just completely like just bizarre. One of the things in the television series and also the Haunting Hour is that a person having a nightmare tends to be a whole lot better than the actual whole episode, and I kind of wish the nightmare was the whole episode, but the nightmare is a little bit more creepier, and so that's why they don't go that route. Now there are Goosebump episodes are typically 20 something minutes. But sometimes you get a two-parter, and the two-parters are some of like the best episodes ever. They're a little bit more creepier, a little bit more darker, and the special effects are normally a lot better. The format of, say, the Goosebumps show is mainly like this. Episodes are normally singular episodes, 20 minutes, but sometimes you'll have like a two-parter or a three-parter. Those are normally the best ones. They have the bigger budget, special effects a little bit more better, and it's a little bit more creepier. The format of the show design is simply put like this. It's normally a pairing. It's normally like a girl and a boy pairing. And one of them is always picking on the other one or pranking the other one or scaring the other one. And the other one is kind of like softer. And then they're always in some type of weird location. Sometimes they could be in a haunted house. They could be living out in the swamp. They could be living on a farmhouse. It could be like a camp. It's always like it could just be at the regular house. It's always some type of like out there location. The music is always complementing the location. When they're out in the swamp, it's like this country hillbilly type music. When they're at the farmhouse, like it's like once again, it's like country type music. When they're in the city, it's more jazzed up. When it's something like really creepy, like a monster type thing, it's this eerie type music. Like it really sets the mood and like the tone. And then of course something spooky always happens, and things always end on like a positive note. Now, one recurring gag in this TV series is bats. Bats, bats, bats. Bats are constantly flying around like everywhere, like in caves, abandoned buildings. It's just a weird gag they keep doing in the show. One of the cool things about Goosebumps was his creepy intro, the very first one. It was just freaky, man. Like, it's this guy in a trench coat and a hat with a briefcase, and he's walking on this big open field, and the briefcase pops open. And then, like, you see, like, this letter with R.L. Stein's name on it, and it just, like, floats out, and it turns into a G. And it just floats around town, and everything the thing passes, everything starts to decay, it looks sad, depressed, or monstrous. And then it goes up into this creepy little house, slowly creeping up to it. And the door pops open, and you see like flashes from images of like the episode. So that was like one of the coolest like intros I've ever seen. But then later on, they did a whole ultimate Goosebumps thing. They jazzed it up by having lots of like scenes from the show in there, and it was just as cool and stuff. Some of my favorite episodes are like from the first season and second season. And like the first episode that air was the haunted mask, which like I said before, is probably like the best of the Goosebumps like mythos. It's just insane that you can relate to the main character. You can get scared and also relate to the main character when she gets scared and everything. It's just good. Cause like, okay, the haunted mask is about a girl named Carly Beth. She is a scaredy cat. She's constantly getting bullied and picked on at school. Everybody picks on her. She hates Halloween because she's always getting made fun of and gets scared the most. And for Halloween, she's always dressing up as a duck. Well, she decided, you know what? I'm tired of being picked on. I'm gonna start scaring other people. So she goes to like this Halloween shop. She purchased a mask. In the show, she ends up stealing it. Now, also, I have to point out, the show is a bit different from the books at times. They changed little details here and there. So she steals the mask. She goes home. She puts it on. She's happy that she looks scary. And her friend goes like trick-or-treating. And so she starts taking the mask off and putting it back on. But then after a while, she starts to realize that she can't take the mask off. It is literally stuck to her head. And when people go to examine, let's try to help her take it off, they can't find the seam. There's no like line of the mask that separates from the mask to your skin. It is literally bonded, welded to her skin. And then when she looks into the mirror, her eyes are no longer the same. Her eyes now look like the masked monster eyes. And she's completely freaking out. Now, during the whole process of all this, The mask is turning her evil. It's making her do things she would never do. And she terrorizes the entire city. And she gets the revenge on those boys that picked on her. Well, all in all, like the she's able to take the mask off because the shopkeeper, he tells her that like an act of love will help you take it off, and it's this little head sculpture that her mom made her for her, and so because of that, she's able to take it off. Welcome to the Dead House. Now, that's a really interesting one where a family leaves the city and they go out into the countryside to this hick type place where it's called, I forgot the name of it. Is it Dead Falls or something like that? Anyway, they go there and the house is completely run down, abandoned, and they got it for really cheap. Every night, something strange would go on in the house. There would be like a person inside their house. And the girl notices that. And she freaks out, tell her parents and family they don't believe her. And so every night there's always somebody in her house. And they're really ghoulish looking and scary, and it freaks her out. She don't want to be there, the boy doesn't want to be there, the parents do, but you know. And then next thing you know, like they start to hang out with some of the kids in the neighborhood, and everybody has like pale skin, and they're wearing like really dark, pale looking clothes. And the kids are very weird and creepy, kind of like a Children of the Corn type thing. And so, like, they find out that a lot of people who live there in the town, they used to live in that house. So the girl and the boy think that's kind of suspicious. Anyway, at one point, dog, the dog is able to like, sense like, I guess, like dead people, and it freaks out and runs off. And so they chase after it. Then they found a bunch of townspeople in the cemetery, and townspeople are talking about eating the new family. And then when they turn around, it turns out that the people in town, they're zombies. Their faces are now decrepit and everything, decaying. So this freaks the kids out. They run, they get chased by the zombies. They go back to their house. The parents are there with two of their neighbors, and they tell them that, there was a chemical spill in the town and the radiation killed a bunch of people, and that's the undead. And then next thing you know, the neighbors turned out to be zombies as well. Now there's an artifact in the house, like a little painting type thing that the mom has. It's supposed to keep out like evil spirits. But the zombie neighbors tell them, they lie to them, talking about, oh, that's what causing the zombies to come here. So they get rid of it. Then of course all the zombies are busting through the house, ready to eat people. And next thing you know, one of the girl or the boy knocks the curtain back by mistake, and the sunlight starts to like causes the skin of the zombies to kind of like melt a little bit and smoke. See, one thing that the kids found that was weird was that none of the people are ever seen during the day. Only in the late afternoon or at night, or they'd be like under some type of shade area. And that's why people always wore hats and stuff to keep the sunlight away. So they rip down the curtains, and then all the town people starts to like die from the sunlight, kind of like a vampire type thing. And then they haul butt all out of there. They find the dog on the side of the road, but then he starts to turn gray because he was bit by a zombie. Ghost Beach is a really cool episode where it's like these two kids, they love being around grave sites and stuff, and then they're spending the time with their cousins, and their cousins are actually really old people. So yeah, who live out in the countryside, and they have like no power because they have an old wooden burner stove. They like to live old school, and you'll find out sooner or later. So it's like they meet these two other kids, and the kids tell them the legend of a ghost that eats people, and how like if you put a ghost in the cave, it traps it there. And ghosts hate dogs. That's why there are like so many dog bones littered around town, because they eat the dogs, because the dogs are able to detect the ghost. And then so this makes the two kids very curious. They constantly keep sneaking out at night to go find like the ghost. And then they find this old man who's living in the cave, and they think he's a ghost, but he said he's not. He hunt ghosts, and then he said their two little friends that they met are ghosts, and he tells them go down to the cemetery. So they go there, and they see the grave sites of like, the little kids that who they befriended. But then something strange happened. Everybody in that town seems to have the last name that they do, and they don't understand why. Anyway, after some shenanigans go about, the two new little kids who have their last name, it turns out they're the ghost and everything. And it turns out they came here on the Mayflower. And you know how that was back in them old days. It's like they didn't have enough food, enough water. It was really cold, and people just died from like starvation and the frost. And so the two little kids died, and they didn't like that. And what they wanted to do was take over their cousin, their descendants' bodies and stuff. And so next thing you know, they get trapped in the cave and this and that. The Fever Swamp episode, that was a two-parter, and it was actually a pretty good one. Like, it's about this kid it's like this family who used to live in the city, and then they move out to a swamp because their dad's doing research, and the two kids hated there, especially the boy, because he can't find absolutely nothing to do. And then he meets this one boy, and they go out to a swamp, and he tells them about the legend of like the fever and how it turns you into like a werewolf. And there's this hermit who he's telling that, oh, the hermit is the werewolf. And turns out that the hermit is who's living out in the swamp. His wife was killed by the werewolf, and it turns out that the boy who met the country boy, he's actually the werewolf. And what's actually cool about this is the suspense of it all. You don't really see the werewolf, and you see the boy getting chased, and it's like a really cool visual effect. You see through the eyes of the werewolf, and it's very like creepy. Like, there are deers that jump through like the window. There are deers that get ate. And it was just like a really creepy and eerie type episode. And what made it really cool was the suspense and you using your imagination to know what's going on. It would have been nice to have a werewolf, but they probably didn't have the budget for that one. The Ghost Next Door is probably one of the darkest episodes I've ever seen. I'm surprised that they aired that on Fox Kids with Saban owning it, because he doesn't allow stuff like that. Anyway, we see this little girl, we see smoke in the house, she's coughing, then she wakes up and everything's completely normal during the day. She's writing her pen pal on the internet. She goes to deliver the letter, but the mailman don't see her. Then she meets a little boy, and she befriends him. And so they're like kicking it off pretty good, but he's hanging out with the local bad boy. He wants to be tough. All throughout this episode, nobody can see this little girl. And then when she tells this boy named Danny that, she lives in this house, and he's all like, I've never seen you before, because he's new. And she goes to his house. His house is completely dark, black. There's no power. The stove is disgusting. Like spiders and webs in there, and just crawling all around. And then, she's all like, she bet this Danny boy is like a ghost, because the way his house looks is completely abandoned. Like, why would he live there? So he must be a ghost. She sees his mother. She talks to the mother, and the mother doesn't see her or acknowledge her. And she's like, oh, you can't see me because you're a ghost. So then the boy tells her, what you doing in my house, and blah, 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 blah. And she's like, I know you're a ghost because I got this news article talking about a fire burnt down. He reads the article, and he's like, no, that's your house. She goes to her house, and she's like, this can't be. And the boy like completely walks through her. It turns out she is the ghost. The reason why his mom couldn't see him is because, she's a ghost, and his mom's deaf. Why the little boy is able to see her? Well, it turns out that there is a ghost that wants to take over his body, and he needs that little boy to die. So they're bonded in that kind of way, because he's literally about to die himself. And so when the little boy Danny finds out the girl is a ghost, Hannah, he doesn't want nothing to do with Hannah because he's now scared of her. She's upset, so she befriends the other ghosts, and she starts like haunting stuff, but then she doesn't really like it that much. When she finds out that the ghost dude wants to like kill Danny and take over his body, she tries to stop him, and she does. And then at the end of the episode, Hannah has to now go away because she has fulfilled her like destiny or whatever, and she goes back to like the underworld or heaven or whatever to meet her family. And we see her family. And, it's a really touching episode, but creepy at the same time. Welcome to Camp Nightmares, about these little kids. They go to camp, and then strange things start happening in the camp. Like people are getting bit by snakes. People are disappearing in the river. Like a lot of bad stuff keeps happening where kids are like disappearing. And when this one kid keeps going to the camp counselor, he keeps telling them, I've never even heard of this student. This camper, and like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so the boy knows something strange is going on. Well, anyways, it gets to the point where so many of his friends have disappeared. He's had enough. He takes a baseball bat and he's ready to take care of business. And then the other campers that are still there, like the people in charge, they are now hunting him down, looking for him. And next thing you know, when they find him, he decides to turn the tables on them with a crossbow and try to shoot the camper, but it doesn't work on him. And then it turns out And the strangest twist of them all, which was just kind of crazy, is that the parent, okay, this was all like a government like training section. His parents worked there, and they're training to go undercover at this alien planet. The alien planet turns out to be Earth. Yes, the people we saw at the campsite, they look human, but they're not. And they go into Earth. I remember when I heard that twist, I was thinking that's like the nuttiest twist I've ever heard, but it was cool at the same time. The Cuckoo Clock of Doom. That's a nice little fun episode. It's about a boy who gets picked on by his little sister. He wished he was never born. His dad buys a cuckoo clock, and so on his birthday, she totally embarrasses him. So he tries to like set her up. He destroys something on the cuckoo clock. Next thing you know, his birthday got repeated, and then next thing you know, every couple of years he's going back in time on his birthday. And in order to stop this, he has to fix it. Well, the problem is he turns into a toddler at one point, but he is able to like fix the clock because the clock was no longer at his house at a pawn shop. Plot summary convenience. And next thing you know, like he goes back to his present day, but when he tried to fix the cuckoo clock, he knocked something off the year his sister was born. And so now that year never happened and she's not born. That Girl That Cried Monster had one of the coolest twists I've ever seen. It's about a little girl. She loves scaring stuff. She loves scaring her little brother. She loves monsters. She goes to the library. The librarian is trying to get her to read like educational books. She doesn't want to do it. When she's there at night, she spies on the librarian, and it turns out he is a monster eating bugs and everything. The transformation is freaky. His face is freaky. Him eating bugs and crickets is gross and nasty. It is freaky. She runs back. Nobody believes her. And so she wants to get proof. So she goes back. When he transforms again, she takes a picture. But of course, the flash goes off. It alerts him. He knows she's there. He chases her back home. And then he shows up at her house and talking about like, and just freaks her like completely out. Then the parents are like, oh, why don't you join us for dinner? And blah, 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 blah. So when he's there for dinner, he asks them, what's for dinner? And the parents are all like, you. Then the parents turn into like monsters, but their transformation is not cool at all. And then when they go to eat him, it's very bad visuals. They didn't have the money to make it like gruesome and plus it's a kid's show. And then the twist is that, okay, the family are monsters. They don't want humans to know they're monsters because the humans will hunt them down and kill them. So every time a new monster comes into town, they kill that monster so it won't like rise suspicion. It's an insane twist. The episode Teacher's Pet, that is dedicated to the actress that was in that episode. As you can see, the one with the curly hair. Sadly, she passed away sometime after filming the episode. I forgot exactly what she died of. It was such a sad thing to hear, Somebody who watched Goosebumps growing up. I remember when I was growing up, she was like this really lovely girl, and she was just taken too soon. All these diseases, man, I swear, it just ain't fair. Rest in peace. Now, the Ryan Gosling episode. Now, that one happens with him and his friends. And they go to, like, this abandoned, like, warehouse place where there's this one dude who's always living there named Spider. He creates a really weird, bizarre-looking camera. And so the kids steal it. And whenever they take a picture of somebody, when it comes out, it doesn't take the picture of them actually there in real time. It shows events in the future of their death or something strange happening to them. So, one girl disappears, the other boy, he like falls down, hurts his arm, and then the Ryan Gosling character, he takes a picture of his family where they die in like a car crash. He figures, he has to like reverse this somehow, so he goes back and he ends up taking a picture of the person who created it. The person goes inside the camera. It's a weird, suspenseful episode. Like I said, it's cheesy, it's corny, but it's fun, Now, there is a follow-up to Say Cheese and Die, also in the books, in the television series. However, this time it got completely recast. Everybody's recast, even Ryan Gosling. And, this one deals with the kid. He takes a picture again and then of himself, and then he starts to gain weight, becomes obese, about to blow up. His friend, instead of going invisible this time, she's like getting really, really thin, about to be about a pile of bones, and It's just like a freaky episode, not as good as the first, but it's still creepy once you think about it, that something like that could actually happen if you just put your mind to it and make believe, you know? So it's not like the greatest, spookiest episode, but it's a creepy episode to think that you're about to blow up or turn into a pile of bones, you know? And you're just a kid. How to Kill a Monster is about this stepbrother and sister that are staying with some relatives in a swamp. Well, a swamp house. They own their own gumbo company. And so, like, the boy doesn't want to be there because he's not related to him. And the girl is just having the time of her life. When they're like searching around the house, the girl was about to like go into this one room, but she's stopped by her relative. Next thing you know, the grandparents, they leave the kids in the house. And then as they're like chasing each other, like pissing each other off, all of a sudden a monster shows up. See, the grandfather shot it in the swamp and he forgot to tell the kids. So they're constantly being chased around the house by the monster as the monster is trying to eat them. But then the girl keeps having like all these ideas. And so she thinks, okay, what if we like, you know, make the gumbo like really, really, really spicy hot? It might kill the monster. So they do that. But the monster passes out, but it doesn't die. Then the boy, when he sees the girl is about to get like, about to be like in trouble, he like punches in the monster and sticks his hand all the way down the monster's throat. This causes the monster to gag and then sneeze. See, the boy Clark, he had a cold, and every time he would sneeze, he wouldn't like wash his hands, and he would sneeze on his hands. So with his hand being inside the monster's mouth and catching his germ, the monster like explodes and guts and blood like flies out everywhere onto the kids. They managed to like escape the house because they're afraid there might be more monsters in the house, and the grandparents just didn't tell them about that. But when they're outside, they read a note from their grandparents, and it shows that, like, you know, that the grandfather shot it, left it in the house. They tell them, don't go into the swamp. And here they are now in the swamp. And they hear, like, monsters all throughout the swamp. The difference between the book and the show is that the monster actually talks. I'm glad they left that out of the show and had the monster just act like a monster, because that would be kind of weird and stuff. So there are times when there are like good changes made to a television show from the books. Piano Lessons are Murder. It is about this boy. He's new in town. He has no friends. He's constantly playing by himself, make believe. There's this one girl in town he does talk to, but that's not really enough for him to get out and socialize. So his parents put him in piano lessons when he found an old piano in the house. He keeps having like these, he keeps hearing like the piano playing by itself, and it's like this ghouly, ghostly woman. While he's in his piano lessons, it turns out that the guy who's the janitor, he chops off the hands of people that play really good at the piano. And so when he's like grabbing the boy and stuff, the ghoul woman, she like attacks the man, and she has like nubs for like hands because he chopped her hands off. And then so the boy escapes, and then the woman tortures the man, making him play piano like constantly. Awesome Ants is about this boy who has this ant farm colony, and is told to only feed it these little blue pellet things. Well, his friend and him decide to feed it more stuff, like real food. Next thing you know, the ants start getting bigger and they're multiplying. They're getting so large that they're like the size of like a house. Then in an unexpected twist, the boy wakes up from a dream. And then in a bizarre, like you watching it, and you just kind of like, what is going on? And then it's shown that in a twist, like it's not the humans that live on Earth and are the dominant species, it's ants, and ants are giant. And ants have humans as like little pets in a little colony jar. And it's a strange, bizarre twist, but it's like the Twilight Zone, you know? That's what makes it so fun. And you're just like, what the, you know? My Best Friend is Invisible. That's about this boy. He's doing like this talent show, not talent show type stuff, but kind of like current events. And he wants to like record like this ghost at this abandoned house. Him and his friend, they go there. His friend doesn't really see it. He does, and it freaks him out. He goes home. Nobody believes him. Then the ghost constantly keeps bugging him, wants to be his best friend, but he's making his life miserable by like, you know, throwing food at like the bully, and then the bully thinks it's the boy. because he can't see the ghost or messing him up at school, his homework and stuff. And so him and his friend go back there to record it. Now she finally sees the ghost. She freaks out. She runs. He runs back to his house. The ghost is now pissed because the boy doesn't want nothing to do with him. He's like, I thought we was friends and blah, 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 blah. And so he starts like throwing stuff at him. The parents bust in with some kind of like equipment that like reveals what the ghost looks like. It turns out to be a little human boy. And so, because it's a ghost. And so the boy who was like freaking out, he's all like, I thought we got rid of all the humans, Dad. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, another R.L. Stein twist. Turns out all the people living on Earth are actually aliens. And they have like these freaky faces when they like turn into aliens and stuff. And what they did was they rounded up all the humans and sent them off to camps. Those that didn't send to camps, they killed. So the boy's freaking out, talking about like, why did you take over my planet and this and that? And the aliens just walking closer and closer and slowly towards him because they're about to mess him up. Then there's the episode Click, where it's not really scary. It's just a bratty little boy who has a remote control that can control the entire universe. And he can make things pause, freeze, go faster, rewind, stuff like that, mute. And so he's abusing the power, and the instructions say on there, don't abuse the power, but of course he does it anyway. And so as he's abusing it more, his friend tells him that you shouldn't be doing this and blah 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 blah. And then next thing you know, he screws up big time. He calls the company is constantly calling him at night, talking about, we told you don't abuse the system and blah 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 blah, stuff like that. So then he tries to like turn his friend out of existence, erase his friend out of existence by turning off the remote control by pointing at his friend. So when he hits the power button, instead of his friend disappearing, he disappears, and he's trapped in like this void and stuff like that. And yes, I know what you're saying, there's an Adam Sandler movie called Click that's very similar to that, and I bet you anything they stole the premise from Goosebumps, which he stole from another book series similar to that. What Lies Underneath the Sink? I do not like that episode at all. The acting's bad. It's like this little sponge thing living up underneath the sink, and it has monster teeth, and it's constantly scaring people. It's constantly showing up where this one girl's at, and it turns out it's cursed and bonded to her. She can't get rid of it, and so they find out that nice music makes it mellow and go to sleep. And it's just like, so she lives with this whole thing for the rest of her life, playing nice music. And I'm just like, that was such a lame episode. There's this really creepy episode where it's like these kids, and they go into like their grandmother's house, and they eat these like prune cookies or something like that, or it's something. And when they eat it, they turn into old men. The twist of this is that the grandmother set her grandkids up so they can date her older friends. Ew. They later, I forgot what the cookies were. It was something that turned them old, but then I think they ate like prunes or something like that, and it made them younger or something like that. And it was just a weird episode. A lot of people like Welcome to Horrorland. I never really liked that episode. It never really did it for me. Like, I like the premise of the idea of like, they go into this Horrorland theme park, a family, like a human family, but then it turns out it's run by real monsters. Now that's really cool. The twist I don't like is that monsters live among us underneath the ground, and they have their own like game reality show where they make humans like, be contestants, and no matter what, the human dies. And it was just a strange, bizarre twist. But the makeup and costumes is really cool. And so, Goosebumps, like I said before, the show, it's a little corny, it's a little cheesy because it's made in the 90s and it's also for kids. But it's scary, like goodness, you know what I'm saying? It's great for kids. If you're older, then you're just gonna have to like imagine that everything is real and just invest yourself in the story. But it's good entertainment and it's fun. It's just like a nice little guilty pleasure, you know what I'm saying? It's not like the Evil Dead, nothing like that. It's not gonna be gruesome and stuff. It's not The Walking Dead, so don't expect nothing like that. It's just, it was made for kids. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.